Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. Let's have a good, strong, potent, juicy chat, JJ. Okay, first question, JJ, that I was thinking is there's always this origin story, right? I think about the success that you've created, the stages that you've been on, the impact that you've had in the world, the best-selling books, the people that you've been able to kind of rub elbows with, so to speak, and your grit, your power as a woman. We all have one or more of those stories, like those turning point moments, the time when our mission became clear and our strength fire got stoked. So I'm curious if you just think of, I'm guessing there's a couple, but one, can you think of one of those moments where it was like a turning point, a decision-making moment that crafted where your journey went from that point forward?
Yeah, I will go back to one, but I will tell you, as far as my mission goes, I feel like I just got clear on my mission. And maybe it's just my new mission, and missions are constantly evolving, right? I mean, my first big goal in life was to never have to rely on anybody for anything, which I'll explain where that came from and why. But now I'm so clear on this mission of helping women age powerfully, not just physically, because power is the biggest thing we lose, but mentally. And what's so crazy that keeps blowing my mind is, as I'm really working through, okay, as we age, we have to put on muscle. We have to put that as our primary focus. You know, it is the time to really do that by eating protein first and lifting heavy things and getting great sleep. And I've been talking about taking creatine and building muscle. And women are like, but I don't want to get big. And I'm like, first off, God help you if you manage to be able to do that. You'd be the first woman I've worked with in 40 years. But also get big. Like, I am so sick of women trying to get as small as possible in life. And so all of a sudden I went, wow, that is really it. It is like, what happens if we get bigger? We step up, we're powerful. And I was telling my husband the other day, I go, you know, my entire adult life, actually not even as an adult, from being a little girl on, girls are taught to be pretty, be quiet, behave, you know, and to not ruffle feathers. If you're strong, you're a bitch. Can I say that? I just did.
Yes.
And I said, you know, I feel like I finally stepped into a place where all of a sudden you're, you know, something happens 50 plus that I think could happen for 40 plus or 30 plus or 20 plus if we do this correctly, where all of a sudden you're like, I'm totally stepping up and being powerful, and it's a great thing. And I'm not, you know, and so if someone doesn't like me, who cares? Now, the thing that held me back the whole time prior to that actually started in Eugene, Oregon. So near you, when my birth mom and birth dad, who were engaged, and this is like the only person she'd had sex with, like the second time he pressured her, and she gets pregnant, and he wants her to abort, to drink quinine and abort. Apparently that was a thing back then. And so she moved to San Francisco, California, into a home for unwed mothers, which is the wildest thing, because I grew up in Berkeley and went to San Francisco for acting school, but I used to wander the streets in San Francisco just kind of as a way to process things, which is what she did while she was pregnant, which I found out way later. But when you're an adopted kid, turns out for most adopted kids, they're either like super overachievers or they're like, you know, a drug addict in a hole somewhere. and not really anything in between. And all the adopted kids I know are one or the other. But, early on, I remember my dad, I was in a store, and man, could I throw tantrums. Like, I just would have these like crazy tantrums. I remember when my son started doing them here, my ex-husband's like, that's from you, that's not me. I'm like, yeah, well, you're right. Anyway, I was throwing one in the store because we were waiting in line to check out, and there was Snickers bars and all these amazing, delicious things. And I wanted one, and I was like not letting up. And I remember my dad leaning over me in the store and saying the thing that is the biggest fear every adopted child has. And it was this. He said, if you don't stop it, I'm sending you back. And, that was the moment of, I will be totally self-reliant. I won't need anything from anybody. I will not, I will learn how to take care of myself. Like, my whole way through high school, I was always working. I started like finding little jobs to do when I was like 10 years old. And, I basically aced high school and was going to junior college at the same time so I could get a scholarship to college so I could get the heck out of there. Mm-hmm. And, it wasn't until recently, the last 8 years, you met my husband, that I finally have actually been able to take a breath and feel safe and not feel alone. And up until then, I wouldn't even I look at my ex-husband who I married, and, anyone I would date, I would never be with someone who I would really be in love with, because I didn't want to be, So, but all along the way, I always heard how strong I was and powerful I was. And it was a bad thing. It was a bad thing. And all of a sudden I go, hold on, this doesn't have to be a bad thing. And what, and I just decided the other day, I was at an event, and a woman who I was talking to said, I never asked you, I was like, why didn't you just ask me to be on my podcast? She goes, I never did, because I was intimidated by you. And I said, you know what? I stand for powerful women. Mm-hmm. So stand up, and she was like, okay. So it just honestly was that fast of an epiphany. And I think for a lot of us, we don't do the things that we really were meant to do or want to do, because the reality is our big fear is that, we will be unlovable and pushed out of the tribe. Right. So.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm hearing a few different things. There's this upbringing that taught you self-reliance. I can really relate. I have a different version. I wasn't adopted, but I definitely was taught self-reliance as early as age 4. And it sounds like it served both of us in the overachieving, and there's also a point where we have to also accept that the surrender and the safety and letting someone in is also big and bold and strong. And so what I'm hearing is you're wanting to support women in their aging powerfully, but also I'm curious if you feel like part of that power has come in finding your husband and allowing his support and allowing yourself to actually feel safe. Is that part of the power?
I'm sure it is. And I remember early on when we were dating, and I credit Allison Armstrong's programs for being able to have this amazing relationship. I think that should be required learning. And think if every girl learned in high school that work and understood that, men are not just hairy women.
Hairy women. Yes,
and
totally.
That they actually say what they mean. These basic truths that you're like, really? Wow. And that they just want to help you. And, when I got that, like my husband just at lunch today, I sat down, I was eating lunch, I was working on my computer. He went over, made me this coffee with cacao calm, put some steamed oat milk on top, brought it over. Like, do you need anything else? I'm like, oh my gosh. The past me would have been like, felt guilty, felt like, you don't have to do all this for me. Now I'm like, wow, thank you. It's incredible.
Yeah. Well, and I think of the the entrepreneurs and leaders that I know that butt up against their first million, and then there's this, and I'm curious if you have seen this too, this kind of breaking down moment where they realize the grit, the self-reliance, the hustle is not sustainable at this point. There has to be a new form of leadership. There has to be a new form of raising our hands and asking for help. Self-care becomes that much more important. And somehow, and I'm a midwife, so I see women when they melt and they surrender, it's when the strength comes. It's right around transition, and then they push these babies out, and it's so powerful. But how is it that somehow we've defined strong as, I got this, self-reliance, I'm going to do it all myself, I'm strong. But also strength can be in being choiceful with who we delegate to and who we ask for support from, but actually the energy of receivership and that kind of feminine energy.
Yep. You know, I was fortunate. This is going to sound bizarre. I broke my first million sitting bedside next to my son in a coma.
Wow.
And I had no choice but to ask for help. I was launching the Virgin Diet. I launched a New York Times bestseller bedside with my son in a coma. I have pictures of like me explaining this. The year before, I'd gone to like 990,000. I was like scratching. And then all of a sudden it was like, phoomp. And here I am, this rocket ship taking off. Literally, my son's, hovering between life and death. I know that I'm not leaving him. And what I'm doing is going to make sure that I can bring him all the way back and then some. So like now success is totally not optional, which is honestly how we should approach it. Not necessarily put yourself in that position, but success shouldn't be optional. And, I had no choice but to ask for help. And boy, when it's someone else's life on the line, you can totally ask for help. Like it's incredible. But it did make me realize I had people, when he was in the hospital, drive hours to come and pray over him. I didn't know these people. And I thought, I want to be a better person. I want to be that person, who is like that. But you realize too, that just like my husband bringing me the coffee today, it's like, it benefits both of you. It always goes both ways. Like I forget there was a study where they gave people $100 and they could either spend it on charity, donate it to a charity, or buy something they'd love. And the people who donated to a charity, like they checked their happiness ratings, et cetera. And the other ones was transient. It was like up and down. And I think they said they spent on shoes. I go, who buys shoes for $100? Like, what are you talking about? Like, come on. But
if you live in Hawaii, Walmart slippers.
I know. It's like, but the rest of us, I guess you could buy some on clouds. But the people who'd done the charity, it was like this lasting happiness from giving.
Right. And in this exchange, by receiving, we're gifting someone the ability to give. And we know how good it feels to give. The other thing that I'm hearing is this nuance of how many of us does it require a crisis moment to finally ask for help or prioritize ourselves. And you and I are both in the world of health. And I tend to work with ambitious individuals who are up to big things in the world and really wanting to have a tremendous ripple effect. But there's this fine line of how do I lead people to wanting to prioritize their wellness and go through a functional medicine lens, but without the crisis. And not from the perspective of vanity when there's so many fires that they're putting out each day. And we've got lots of quote unquote, pots burning on the stove. From a health perspective and self-prioritization, especially for the individuals that are really carrying a lot, how do you help, or even through Mindshare and the other providers that you've supported, how do we help individuals kind of shift the gaze and prioritize their wellness, prioritize their receiving support, asking for help before the crisis hits?
I know it is the sad part of health in that prevention, healthcare is not healthcare, it's disease care, as we know, and what we should have is well care. But trying to sell well care is, people don't tend to do that. They want to fix the problem. And until there's a problem, right, they won't know to fix it. But I think what we can identify is way earlier on, help people realize if all the things you were put here to do are reliant on your health, your energy, your focus, your mood, right? All of that. And if we could start to look way earlier at these markers, because as you know, like no one wakes up and has cancer or diabetes or heart disease. All of these things are progressing over time. I'm so excited about all of the wearables and all the different ways. Today, I just ordered some Polar H10 straps for Tim, me, and my son, who's the victor of a brain injury, so that we could really get dialed on our morning HRVs and check our stress throughout the day. And I just think that the more we start to be able to monitor these things and start to identify, is we got to identify that there's a problem.
Right.
People aren't going to do stuff just to fix nothing, right? But if you start to flip the switch and go, okay, if I'm not working at my peak, like if I hadn't walked in when Grant got hit by the car, which is what ended him up in a coma in the hospital, and in the hospital for 4.5 months and then years of recovery, I happened to walk into that situation at the top of my game, like completely healthy, completely ready. And, immediately I called for help, and I had all my friends bringing me, supplements, hormones, everything, so I could manage all of the stuff going on with my adrenals, like threw me into low thyroid and menopause immediately. Boom. It was like,
wow,
away we go. I was 49. So it was like bad timing.
Yeah.
And I had a book come, it was already a super stressful time. And then, you have this. But if you look at this and go, we can start to measure things and identify issues as part of an annual exam or part of your wellness check at home, which would be amazing, then you'd start to work on these things. And if you look at it and go, of all the tools that I have to live my life and really do the things I want to do, everything from being the CEO of my family and taking care of everything there, from health to events to activities and all that on down, my health's my biggest tool. And how do I make sure that everything's in line? And I think now we're being able to identify these things, because used to be, you wouldn't pay attention to it till something broke.
Right.
But,
so continuous glucose monitoring as an example.
Here's the thing, continuous glucose monitoring, by the time your blood sugar's wacky, unless it's an HRV thing, unless it's a stress thing, but by the time, let's say that your blood sugar's a little off because of insulin resistant, you've been insulin resistant for a while. So why wouldn't we go to our docs early on, and our lab tests are going to look for all of these markers that you can see early? Why wouldn't we be getting a DEXA scan at least once a year, maybe twice a year, not waiting till 55 to go, oh, you're osteoporotic. Bummer. Well, let's try to unfry that egg, So you look at it and go, what if we have all of these screening things that from an economic perspective could save us billions. But
what are some of your favorite from a lab perspective that you think we're missing?
Okay, well, I'm going to go straight to first. There's so much information if you just did a DEXA body scan, right? That alone. Then combine it with being at home and having a BIA, a bioimpedance machine, plus a tape measure that you did. And these are all Bluetooth now. So you can just do them and they go straight into your phone. Then the labs that, the very least, just doing some metabolic health labs, beyond blood sugar, looking at fasting insulin, maybe looking at HOMA-IR, so you can really get that picture along with triglycerides and HDL, and then do a triglyceride to HDL ratio. And then you can go deeper and do fractionated cholesterol. But, just looking at the metabolic health piece of it, because that alone, you look at that, it's now less than 7% of people have that as healthy, and the metrics they used are not ideal anyway. So I think we're probably 5%. But, the hammer that I have diet, exercise, lifestyle. And my whole training in college, graduate school, doctoral school was exercise science until I switched over and started studying nutrition. And for so long, I was like, exercise. I ran out of classes and I was like, but now I'm looking at exercise going, of all of the tools that we have, like if this was a drug, this would be the drug everyone would prescribe. Like you look at all of the big aging issues, and exercise is the one that can improve or fix all of them. Exercise, right? And yet we have these really lame prescriptions because exercise is so many different things. It's resistance training, it's cardiovascular training, but in resistance training, you could build muscle or you could build strength or you could build power. They're actually different. In cardiovascular, you can do sprint training, you can do long, slow distance. They're different, right? And then you've got flexibility and balance. So it's hard to prescribe exercise. And then you get this 150 minutes a week, and not even half the population's even doing that. And that's like foundational. So,
right. And you add on, I don't know about you, but I find that I'm having a lot of conversations with individuals that just feel like they're being pulled in all directions all day long, overworked.
Who isn't? Like, who isn't overworked?
So how do you help? So, and then also as I'm listening, I'm thinking, I think that the majority, their normal is likely feeling like crap. But it's all that they know. It's become their normal and it's like, oh, if we could just give them a taste of what vibrance and vitality feels like.
I know they'd never go back. When I wrote The Virgin Diet, the first 7 days of it, people feel so remarkably different. The first couple of days are a struggle because they have all the cravings they're breaking through. But when they get to day 7, they're like, oh my gosh, like no more gut pain, dropped a bunch of inflammation, they're energetic, and they're like, holy smokes. And it was funny because people would come in because they want to lose weight, then they're just staying because I'm like, I just like to feel this way. And again, it's because people have no idea what feeling good feels like. And it's true if we could just give them a little bit of an indicator. However, we also have to do this in a way, I like to do this in simple little wins, one by one, because if you overwhelm, you won't do anything. And the reality is, the harder a driver you are, the more ambitious you are, the bigger your platform, the bigger your message, the bigger your why, the more important this all becomes, because you do not have time. Like, it is so true. If you don't sleep well, like, you're not going to work the way you possibly could normally work the next day. Yeah. And that can become a chronic problem. If you don't have the focus, whether it's from, poor diet or hormone imbalance or whatever, you're not going to be able to get the stuff done. So it's like, the more you want to do, the more important this becomes. And if you want to be highly effective, you got to be an athlete. And we all need to be an athlete. We all need to behave like an athlete, which means there just become these non-negotiables in your life. And one of them is moving every single day and then doing some focused exercise, because activity is not exercise, right? There's activity, there's exercise. It's like, so you look at it and go, what are the non-negotiables? Sleep is a non-negotiable, like the top of the list. Having some kind of practice to manage stress, just like you're taking your body to the gym, you have to take your nervous system directly to the gym. So whether it's meditation, breath work, whatever it is, non-negotiable, and then obviously exercise, non-negotiable. The way you eat, non-negotiable. If you just did those things and just attacked one by one, and like meditation took me 6 months to really get into. 6 months where I was like, this isn't doing anything. How do I know if I got it right? And massive shift. And I'm like, and I have to add how much time into my life? And all of a sudden I went, you get it back in spades. Exercise, you get it back in spades. Yeah. So it's just a non-negotiable, like all of those things, but you start one by one. Like anytime I write a book or a program, I start with one thing. It's like that book Gary Keller wrote. Like, I love that book. It's like one thing.
Just the one thing. Such a great book. Such a great book. Yeah.
And it's like a way to tackle life. Yeah. It really is.
So, okay. So I'm hearing a few things. I'm hearing, how do we not wait till the crisis? We acknowledge that it's a non-negotiable. Our wellness and our health just have to be a priority. Sleep is a non-negotiable. Body movement is a non-negotiable, specifically exercise. I imagine hydration is a non-negotiable. And I'm also hearing if you can get some of the better tests out there on the marketplace to really get some quantifiables that are going to move you, choose that one thing and then get a taste of what feeling spectacular looks like. Once someone tastes it and realize my normal is actually crap, they'll never go back.
Right. And they can just build on it. Like, I think a DEXA scan is under $100 now. It's an easy one. You can get the labs we talked about covered by insurance, but fasting insulin's cheap. So, I mean, these things are this is not an expensive thing.
Well, and I think the other thing is, I think of thyroid as a big one, but the challenge is how many people go to their mainstream providers and they say, we've tested your thyroid, everything looks fine. And I look at it, I'm like, no, not fine.
Way. It's like, well, and if they're looking at thyroid and not looking at thyroid plus symptoms and not looking at free T3 and not looking at antibodies and not looking at reverse, no clue. And most of them have just looked at the TSH. They're looking at it in the normal lab ranges, which are unhealthy humans.
Yep.
It's just, here's an interesting one. When I was in grad school, we had a whole semester just doing body composition. And we were taught metrics, very specific metrics on what's, ideal, what's normal, what's not healthy. And just recently I was pulling this apart for my next book, and I go, this is so bizarre because the body fat norms have gone up dramatically. How is it now that it's healthy for us to be at a body fat percentage that back when I was trained was considered to be metabolically unhealthy?
Right. We're accepting a new normal.
It's like, that's let's not do it. It's, how much worse does it have to get before people just go, okay, you don't want to be average. I'm sure people listening to the show are not listening to the show because they're average.
Right.
They don't want average health. Average health in our country, I think means, gosh, you're on 7 prescription medications. You're obese. Because now 40% of the population's obese. So you're obese, you're on 7 medications, and your life expectancy is 73.
Well, not to mention the fact that you've worked your whole life in hopes that one day you'll retire and then you'll have the time and energy to go enjoy your life finally, reap the rewards, and yet now you find yourself unhealthy. I'm aware of time. When we met in Austin, your power is palpable. And it made me think of the Marianne Williamson quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's not our light. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. And I thought, for a powerful woman who's tall, has a strong presence, has a strong energy, there must have been moments where there were other women or other individuals who maybe wanted to squish your energy. You felt put down, moments of comparison, moments of who am I to be great? I'm curious, what do you think has propelled this feist within you to continue to have bigger goals and enter a room where your power is palpable and you don't dim it at all? I think sometimes people will dim their light. They're afraid of making someone feel small, or they're afraid of outshining, whatever it may be. I don't feel any of that from you.
I don't know any other way to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess there's that.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you though, I remember when my kids were small and they were in school, and I was on TV in Los Angeles every week. And so I was always running from Palm Springs to LA, which is a terrible commute, and between being a single mom. And I'd gone through a really contentious divorce, so a lot of stuff going on. And there's always was this weirdness between the working moms and the non-working moms. So there was that one where the non-working moms were like kind of snotty to the working moms. And I'm like, that's weird. But then even the working moms were snotty to me. And I remember one of them called me to ask me where, they called to invite my son to a party or something. They go, "Where are you?" And I stupidly said, "Oh, I'm in LA at Paramount getting ready to go on set." And that was it. Like and I remember I went to drop off my son at a party and all the moms were there, except I wasn't invited. And he later told me, he goes, "Yes, they think you're stuck up, full of yourself, so important." And they actually told my ex-husband that I was lucky to have his last name so that my book became successful.
Wow.
The Virgin Diet. My ex-husband goes, "That book would have been successful no matter what it was called. Have you met my wife? My ex-wife, she was going to make sure that thing worked." But I mean, I didn't have female friends. I had so many guy friends.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have female friends until I kind of found the entrepreneurial women's space and found women who were up for supporting each other instead of trying to hold each other back. And I was just honestly thinking about this yesterday. I thought, gosh, I was thinking about my 40th birthday and how I didn't really have any friends. I was in Las Vegas with one of my guy friends, and I was like, thought, God, this is really kind of a lame birthday. Versus my 50th birthday, where it was in Miami, a bunch of women threw it for me. In fact, like Sarah Gottfried, Annika Becca, a bunch of just really cool entrepreneurial health people. And the difference, because I found women who stand for powerful women, who stand up for each other, who aren't threatened by them, who think, who realize that, you put a lot of shining light together and you get really bright. It doesn't make, you standing next to a bright light doesn't mean yours goes dimmer. It means you're bright too. And it's just a weird thing. I don't think men have this the way women do. Mm-hmm. And, if I raised boys, so I always said I'm a boy mom. So I raised my boys to totally dig strong, powerful women. Like they don't know anything different. But had I raised women, that's what I would have raised. I would have raised women to never put down another woman or blow their candle out, or, it's like help hold them all up. Right.
Yeah. 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 And it sounds like now the next version of it is you're really wanting to support women beyond menopause.
Oh, heck yeah. I think, it's really kind of my secret, my sweet spot is the 40 plus, when things really start to shift and rock and roll. But there's a magic little switch that flips off at 50 that I was like, this should have been able to be flipped before. It's I do not give a F. The 0 F's given switch that goes off. Now I have a couple friends who already have it at 35 and 40, but there's something, it gets bigger at 50 where you just go, I never would have walked out of the house before without like makeup on. Now I was like, I don't care. You just don't care about any of that stuff anymore. And you just are not afraid to just show who you are. And you're also not afraid if someone doesn't like you, because they're not like, one of the big things I do when I'm coaching other health practitioners to really, live into their brand is I would say there's going to be people who are not going to like you. If you do not have that, it's because you are not playing out there big enough and strong enough with your message. Because the minute you really create that message out there, it's got to be a little polarizing. I was just coaching a woman who is really a big Christian woman and really amazing doctor in women's health. And she just has been kind of tiptoeing around that. I'm like, go out there, be bold. She goes, I did a little bit. And one woman got mad. I'm like, then take her off your list. Yeah. Just one.
Right. I love, one of my coaches once said, if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one.
Exactly. I did a post like I've worked in weight loss resistance for years. So I think these weight loss drugs have some amazing, they're amazing for that person who's been stuck and needs some help. And so I posted something about it, and some dietitian sent me a DM and she goes, this is disgusting. And I go, thank you so much for your opinion. And and she then put back LOL, and I sent her a little smiley kiss, because I was like, right. You're entitled to your opinion. I don't know why in social media we feel like we're letting out our inner bitch. I'm like, would you do that to me in person? No, you'd be too scared. So you little yes. Miss Courage bully. You would never be like that in person. So would you say this to someone in person? If you wouldn't, shut your trap.
Or would we change the way we say it to be able to be honest, to be able to be confronting, but to
without
do it
saying this is disgusting.
Yeah, to do it respectfully.
Yeah, I mean, I've got friends in the space who feel the exact opposite of me, and we just have great conversations about it. No one feels disrespected, or anything else. But it's wild when I see that kind of stuff. And now I used to like get all angry about it. Now I just think it's funny because it's like you're seeing who that person is. You're going, gosh, you must just, when you squeeze an orange, the whole Wayne Dyer, when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice. I'm like, boy, squeeze you and ugly comes out.
Well, it makes me think, Brene Brown, you can't hate somebody close up. We need to learn how to get close up again. And also for those listening, JJ, you mentioned Allison Armstrong. I did interview Allison, so we'll make sure to put that interview in the show notes. She's been here on this podcast, and I love her work. Celebrating Partnership as an Audible is like accessible for everyone. So good.
Yep.
Any last parting words? Specifically, I mean, we're just getting into the beyond menopause conversation, but we've covered a lot of ground. For those that are listening,
give it in a synopsis on the beyond menopause. And this really actually should be things you're starting to think about at age 30. And that's why I'm like pro DEXA and again, this is coming from being an exercise physiologist, but it's so relevant, is the big thing that we start to lose as we age is muscle. But bigger than muscle, we lose strength, and bigger than that, we lose power. And when you look at age 60 plus, if you break your hip, 30% of the people will die within a year. And what protects them is that power, that ability to adjust, to catch themselves, right? And so when I look at what we need to do, we need to be at this moment from here on out working on putting down and holding on to as much muscle mass as possible. The reality is, if you've been wanting to lose weight, you actually do not want to lose weight. You want to lose fat. And if you put on more muscle, you become more insulin sensitive, and you have a little sponge where sugar, carbs have a place to land that's not your belly. And you've got the metabolic Spanx effect of muscle that holds everything tighter and boosts your metabolism. And it's been overplayed how much that is, but adding a pound of muscle. It's like I've heard now anywhere from 10 to 100 calories a day. But even if it was something small like 30 calories a day and you add 10 pounds of muscle, that's 300 calories a day. That's significant over time, but it's more the metabolic effect, the insulin sensitizing effect of that, that makes such a massive difference. So my whole focus now is the simple way that we can achieve that, starting with, of course, identifying it through a DEXA, but then eating protein first so that you make sure you get how much protein you need in. And I created a calculator for that. And then lifting heavy things like, there's a place in life for Pilates or yoga, but I go to the yoga studio where all they do is yoga. And I swear to God, I could take those women and throw them across the room. You're just these little lightweight things. And I know it's that whole mindset of, I don't want to get big. You do actually want to have really strong muscles. And I've never once seen a woman get big doing that. It's like, unless you want to take steroids. And then of course, get some sleep, because all the stuff that you need to heal and become amazing happens with good rest.
And yesterday I interviewed Dr. Rosensweet from the perspective of bioidentical hormones, and he was speaking to sarcopenia from the perspective of testosterone. And, now we're talking about muscle mass, and as we're gaining more muscle mass, we're also helping boosting testosterone levels. So we've got the hormonal impact. There's so much we can talk about here. So thank you for your time. I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you do in the world. And I'm sure everyone in the show notes is all of her social media places, her website, all the places to find her. And then we'll also grab links to the books. I need to make sure the team grabs links to the books to put
grab links to the protein calculator too. That's the fun one. Then you'll know what you need, because that's the big one I'm working on, is making sure people are, if that's all you did coming out of today was start to eat more protein, and you eat it first, you'll be more satiated, more satisfied. You'll drop some weight. If that's all you did, shifted some of your carbs and fat for protein.
Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm still the DEXA scan. Are you thinking from a T-score perspective?
No, I'm not thinking bone density. Bone density is a lagging indicator. If you fix your muscle, you won't have a bone density issue.
So the DEXA
It's just
scan,
like blood sugar for insulin. You fix insulin, you won't have a blood sugar problem unless it's a stress problem, right? We have to say that. For bone density, if you've got great musculature, if you've been lifting weights, you won't have a bone density problem. And so when you do a DEXA now, there's a software program, and it was interesting. I did it when I was 39. I just did it again at 59 and had the exact same result, which was super cool. Because as we age, we tend to lose, up to 1% of muscle mass each year. So if someone weighs the same as they weighed 20 years ago, but they haven't been actively doing resistance training, it's not the same weight, right? And it's what your weight's made up of that makes all the difference. So a DEXA scan can look at something called your appendicular lean mass index, which is your skeletal muscle mass. And not only can it give you a rating overall, it can also look at your trunk, your arms, and your legs. So you can go, am I in balance? Is my right side different than my left side? Then it can look at your body fat. And it also can look at something called your visceral adipose tissue, or it can give you what's called an android to gynoid ratio, just to see if you've got more of that visceral fat that's, no one wants to have a bunch of fat on their butt and thighs. But the reality is, if you had it all there and you didn't have anything viscerally, it's really not the risk. The risk is in the belly fat. And the challenge for women as we age, if you're not doing hormone replacement therapy and estrogen's going down, you are going to have that belly fat for two reasons. Number one, because cortisol is going up and cortisol receptors around the belly, and you're going to lay down more belly fat that way. And then number two, because we're going to start to produce estrogen through those fat cells. So you're preferentially going to build belly fat. So you got a double whammy, and you're probably becoming insulin resistant too. So that's a trifecta.
Totally vulnerable share. My guess is I'm probably one of these that needs to hear this message more than just as much as everyone else. And you're definitely motivating me to remember I've got 3 young children. I run a business, a household, and I can easily put aside my weight-bearing exercise. And at 46, I know how important it is, especially my husband is a personal trainer and a physical therapist. Like, we both know this. So thank you for the reminder.
The good news is it's not like you can do a lot in a little bit of time.
Yeah. I have my dumbbells right outside my bedroom and at the top of the stairs. So even if I'm going downstairs, I'll just grab the dumbbells and go up and down a couple extra times. It's right next to my infrared sauna. So every time I get out of the sauna, even if it's just 5-10 minutes, I'm at least doing something.
Do some
but I know
squats,
that there's space.
Do some deadlifts, do some push-ups, but the real thing, because this is the age where you want to be laying down as much muscle as possible. And in order to build muscle, you have to do progressive overload. If you're doing what your body's used to, your body does not have to increase. Only, just think of anything in life like that. It has to be more than what you're used to for your body to adapt and get stronger.
So good. I'm sure everybody's listening is wanting more. So reach out to JJ. Grab her books. Another one is on the way, which I am excited to hear more about. And JJ, thank you for all your time.